Science has always promised us that, with enough effort, we could understand everything. But 20th century physics, led by minds like Richard Feynman, hit an invisible wall. Feynman discovered that the universe doesn't follow the logic of our senses. It follows its own logic that the human brain simply wasn't designed to process. We are like primates trying to understand the architecture of a microprocessor. We can see the glint of silicon, but we will never understand the code. Prepare to face the boundary where your mind stops and naked reality begins. Prepare to face the most humiliating and, paradoxically, most liberating truth of our species. We are biologically blind to reality. Richard Feynman, the physicist who won the Nobel Prize for drawing the invisible, left a lesson that wounds our pride. Humanity's fundamental error is believing that its eyes were made to see the truth. Evolution doesn't care about truth. It cares about survival. Our senses were forged to detect the movement of a predator in the grass or the color of a ripe fruit. Nothing in our biology prepared us to process the curvature of space-time or the ghostly nature of subatomic particles. This is where the revolutionary concept of mathematics as a cognitive prosthesis. Imagine you were born in a hermetically sealed room with no windows, no sound, no contact with the outside world. Your only connection to the outside world is a screen that displays only binary codes, zeros, and ones that blink frantically. To anyone else, this would be just noise. But for a mathematician, these zeros and ones describe the temperature of a star millions of light years away, or the pressure at the bottom of an alien ocean. You will never feel the heat of that star or the pressure of that sea, but you know they exist. You see them through the numbers. For Feynman, mathematics is that window. It's not just a school subject or a set of boring rules on a blackboard. It's the only sensory organ that allows us to feel the hidden workings of the cosmos. Our brain is a limited hardware. When we try to use our visual imagination to understand an electron, we automatically create the image of a tiny ball spinning around a nucleus, like a minuscule solar system. But mathematics tells us, with merciless clarity, that the electron is not a tiny ball. It is a cloud of probabilities, an entity that can be in multiple places at once until someone observes it. Your visual imagination freezes when trying to visualize this, but the equation remains stable. Mathematics is the intellectual hook that allows us to climb mountains of reality that our biological feet could never reach. Think of a physical prosthesis, a mechanical arm, or a carbon fiber leg. It's not part of your flesh, but it allows you to perform functions that your original body could no longer do. Mathematics is exactly that for the mind. It is artificial limb of consciousness. It allows us to touch extra dimensions, calculate the behavior of black holes, and predict the existence of particles decades before any microscope is built to see them. Almost no one understands that mathematics is the only language the universe speaks without accent and without ambiguity. Feynman explained that if we depended only on words, we would be lost in imprecise analogies forever. The words wave and particle are merely linguistic crutches we use to try to describe phenomena that are neither one thing nor the other. They are macroscopic labels that we try to attach to the microscopic world. Mathematics, on the other hand, describes reality with a precision bordering on mysticism. It is a narrative without holes, a perfect script where each variable is a character with a defined role in maintaining the fabric of space-time. Through it, we can predict the behavior of nature with the accuracy of 1 part in a billion. This is not just intelligence. It is the use of a tool that extends our consciousness beyond the boundaries of skin and bone. The tension in this topic lies in the fact that we are totally dependent on this prosthesis. If we remove mathematics from modern physics, nothing remains but vague poetry and self-help mysticism. Feynman challenges us to abandon the sensory ego. He shows us that mathematics allows us to operate the universe without needing to understand it intuitively. It's like piloting a modern jet, using only instruments during a blind storm. You don't see the runway, you don't see the horizon, but you blindly trust the numbers on the panel because they are more real than the absolute darkness outside. The universe has no obligation whatsoever to be visualized by a primate, but it does have an absolute obligation to be logical and consistent. By accepting mathematics as our only true vision, We stop trying to tame the cosmos with our limited perceptions. We accept that we are deficient beings using an infinite tool. The mistake was thinking that mathematics was something difficult. The truth is that it is the only thing that makes the universe bearable and intelligible. It is the light that shines where our minds find only emptiness and absurdity. Thanks to this cognitive prosthesis, we were able to build the technological civilization in which we live today. We don't see atoms, but we calculate their energy and illuminate our cities. We don't see the folds of space, but we calculate the orbits of the satellites that guide your GPS. Mathematics is the ultimate proof that, although we are prisoners of a brain that wasn't made to understand the universe, we were ingenious enough to build the glasses that allow us to read it. Prepare to discover that you are a prisoner, not of a concrete cell, but of a biological scale. Richard Feynman often pointed out that what we call common sense or intuition is merely a set of biases accumulated by hardware that evolved to survive on the African savanna, not to understand the deep structure of the cosmos. Average scale paradox. This reveals that we inhabit a zone of sensory twilight. We are situated between the infinitely small, the quantum world, and the infinitely large, the relativistic universe. But our brain only processes what is exactly in the middle. The result? A worldview that is simultaneously functional and completely false. Imagine the universe as a symphony orchestra, playing a complex piece across thousands of different frequencies. Your brain is a radio that can only tune into a single station, the medium frequency. You understand what a rock, a tree, or a predator is because these things have the right size and speed to interact with your body. If an object were too small, it would pass through you without warning. If it were too large, you wouldn't even realize you're part of it. The paradox lies in the fact that we believe what we see is standard reality. Feynman warns us that our perception is a crude addition. We see the world as something continuous, solid, and predictable only because we are too large to see atoms and too small to notice the curvature of space. The solidity you feel when touching a table is, in fact, a statistical illusion created by the repulsion of trillions of electric fields. If you could see reality without the filter of the average scale, you would see that the table is composed of 99.9999% emptiness. You live in a lacunar narrative where nature omits 99% of the information so that you don't suffer a mental breakdown. Here the suspense increases. Our logic is local. It only works for objects weighing between a few grams and a few tons and moving at human speeds. When we try to export this logic to other scales, the universe begins to seem absurd. At the quantum scale, for example, time and causality become vague suggestions. A particle can be in two places at the same time, or even travel back in time. To your brain, this sounds like magic or a system error, but the error is not in the universe, it's in your brain. Primate software. You try to apply the rules of a board game, a daily life, to a system that operates in dimensions you can't even pinpoint. The mean scale paradox keeps us comfortable while we chat about trivialities, ignoring the fact that the world's stability is sustained by a violent and unpredictable subatomic anarchy. Feynman said that the hardest thing to explain is the obvious, because the obvious is almost always a lie of the senses. What we call obvious is merely what happens frequently enough on our scale not to frighten us. It's obvious that an apple falls from a tree, but it's not at all obvious that the mass of that apple is distorting the fabric of time around it. We live in a state of sensory arrogance. We judge the universe based on our 80 years of experience living on a tiny planet. Screenwriters use the technique of false security to create plot twists. The universe does the same to us. It lets us believe that things are solid and time is linear while we are on the medium scale. But as soon as we look through a microscope or telescope, the mask falls. The real world is bizarre, unstable, and frighteningly strange. True intelligence, according to Feynman's view, begins when you admit that your intuition is an unreliable guide. Accepting the mean scale paradox is the ultimate act of humility in science. It is recognizing that we are limited observers equipped with rudimentary senses trying to decipher an infinite code. The value of this knowledge for the viewer is the shock of perspective. You stop worrying about the trivialities of the human scale and begin to feel the magnificent weight of being a consciousness that despite being trapped in a biological bubble, has had the audacity to map what lies beyond it. We are not the masters of reality. We are tourists in a foreign land, trying to translate the infinite into a language we can understand. Reality is not what you see. It is what remains there when you admit that your eyes are lying. Prepare yourself for the climax of intellectual discomfort. Richard Feynman, with his brutal honesty, confronted us with an abyss that most science communicators try to hide. Nature has no obligation whatsoever to be visualized, comprehensible, or to make sense to an evolved primate. Humanity's fundamental error is visualization addiction. We firmly believe that understanding something is the same as being able to form a mental image of it. But modern physics has reached a point where the universe simply refuses our gaze. We are facing a reality that cannot be imagined. A domain where your brain overheats and the hardware of consciousness simply crashes. Our brain is a high-performance graphics processor, but with extremely limited software. For millions of years, natural selection has favored minds that could create rapid visual models for survival. Because of this, we have become addicted to analogies. When science presents us with the quantum world, our first reaction is to ask, but what does it look like? Feynman explained that this question is a category mistake. At the fundamental level, things don't look like anything. The concept of appearance depends on light hitting an object and reaching your eyes. But how can you talk about the appearance of a photon if it is light itself? How can you visualize the shape of an electron if shape is a macroscopic concept that doesn't exist at that scale? Almost no one understands that, when trying to imagine the subatomic, you are trying to describe a symphony using only the sense of taste. You can say that the music is sweet or salty, but that's a deceitful simplification to hide your inability to hear. The universe is not made of things with outlines. It is made of probabilistic events which defy any attempt at mental design. Imagine a suspense script where the antagonist is an entity that has no body, volume, or defined location. It is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. For a filmmaker, this is a visual nightmare. For Feynman, this is the everyday reality of physics. We use words like wave or particle only because we know ocean waves or grains of sand. These are labels we try to forcibly attach to something that is neither one thing nor the other. The reality that refuses to be imagined is made of overlaps. When mathematics tells us that a particle travels all possible paths simultaneously, your mind tries to create an image of division or ghosting. But nature doesn't divide, it simply exists in a state that your biological hardware doesn't have a renderer to process. You're trying to run a file of reality in a format that your human operating system doesn't recognize. This conflict creates a vacuum of understanding that most people try to fill with mysticism. But Feynman challenges us to embrace the absurd. Nature is what it is, not what you want it to appear to be. In screenwriting theory, there is the concept of MacGuffin, something that drives the plot, but whose exact nature is never fully revealed. In physics, the atom is the ultimate MacGuffin. We know it sustains every cell in your body and every star in the sky, but no one has ever seen an atom as it truly is. What we see are representations, electron shadows, and models. Existential tension arises from this. We are made of something we cannot conceive. Almost no one understands that the solidity of the world is a controlled hallucination of the brain. If you could remove the filter of the average scale and see naked reality, you wouldn't see objects. You would see a whirlwind of force fields and formless vacuum fluctuations. Beauty and horror walk hand in hand when we realize that the clarity of our daily lives is just a thin film over an ocean of pure abstraction. The universe operates at a frequency of pure probability, where being is replaced by being able to be. If we cannot imagine, how can we know? Herein lies Feynman's genius. He understood that when the mental image dies, mathematics is born as our only salvation. Accepting that reality cannot be imagined is not a defeat. It is the greatest triumph of human intelligence. It is the moment when we stop projecting our fantasies of bubbles and waves onto the cosmos and begin to respect nature in its sovereign strangeness. The conclusion is a shock of reality. You are a limited observer. equipped with a biological camera that only captures a ridiculous fraction of the truth. The universe is not a stage set for your understanding. It is a vibrant mystery that operates beyond your capacity for visualization. Feynman taught us that true wisdom lies not in imagining the impossible, but in having the courage to work with it and admire it, even knowing that our minds can never capture its true face. The end of the mental image is ultimately the beginning of real vision. Richard Feynman didn't take away our understanding to leave us in the dark, but to give us the freedom to be humble. Physics has found a limit that the mind cannot cross, and that's precisely where true wonder begins. The value for you, the viewer, is this. Don't try to tame the universe with your primate logic. Instead, learn to love its strangeness. Reality isn't obligated to make sense to you, but you have the privilege of being here, witnessing the absurd. You are a piece of the cosmos that has developed the audacity to study itself, using mathematics to see where the eye fails. The secret isn't solving the mystery, but having the intelligence to marvel at the fact that we inhabit something infinitely greater than our capacity to dream. We have reached a point where science ceases to be merely a search for answers and becomes an exercise in profound humility. The journey through the ideas of Richard Feynman, this leads us to an inevitable crossroads, the realization that we are a species equipped with survival software, trying to decipher the source code of an infinite universe. But the real value of this conclusion lies not in acknowledging our insignificance, but in celebrating our audacity. The end of biological arrogance. The first great lesson we must take to heart is the abandonment of our biological arrogance. We have spent millennia believing that the universe was made in our image and likeness, or that our human logic was the ultimate yardstick of existence. Feynman shatters this illusion. By accepting that physics has found a limit that the mind cannot cross, we are freed from the obligation that everything makes sense. Making sense is a need of the human ego, not a law of nature. When you stop demanding that the universe be intuitive, you open the doors to a much richer understanding. The value for the viewer here is intellectual peace. There is immense freedom in admitting, I can't imagine how time bends or how an electron behaves, but I accept reality as it is. This acceptance is what distinguishes the curious from the truly wise. Reality is not a puzzle you need to solve to feel intelligent. It is a magnificent spectacle that you have the privilege of observing. Mathematics as our immortal legacy. The most fascinating detail of this conclusion is the role of mathematics. If we are biologically blind, mathematics is proof that our intelligence was able to build its own path to the light. It is our purest legacy. While our senses bind us to earth, to colors and sounds, our equations allow us to float among the stars and delve into the heart of atoms. The practical value of this is understanding that human knowledge is a victory over our own nature. Every time a physicist calculates the trajectory of a particle or the expansion of a galaxy, he is performing an act of rebellion against the limitations of the flesh. We were not made to know this, and yet we do. This transforms science into a heroic art form. You, as a human being, are the only place in the known universe where the universe itself sits to think about itself, even if that thought needs prosthetics to be completed. Amazement as a state of being. The ultimate conclusion of this roadmap is a call to action. Stop trying to tame the cosmos with your logic. Instead, use your mind to admire your own blindness. Feel the weight of the average scale, acknowledge the necessity of your mathematical prostheses, and accept that the true face of nature is something you will never see, but which sustains every beat of your heart. The universe owes you no explanations, but it has given you the necessary awareness to feel the shiver of not understanding. And in the end, perhaps that shiver before the infinite is the most real thing you will ever feel. You are not the master of reality. You are its most awestruck witness. And it is in this humility that true human greatness resides.